welcome to episode 51 of Enterprising Minds. Today, we're going to talk about something that seems very simple, but man alive, as soon as you start trying to do it, there's 20,000 approaches and 40,000 opinions and too many people that you're going to have to rely on. And how do you get them to do what you want them to do in order to get a corporate project done in that kind of work environment, right? So how do we get a project done in the world of corporate America? I know I have my own opinions, but Alex, I think you had a really good cue for your idea around this. And then since Ruthi is allergic to self-promotion, I'll do it for her. She just did the Adobe Summit and presented on a similar topic, if not the same topic. I'll let her talk about it because it deserves to be talked about. It's Adobe Summit, Ruthi. Anyway, I also had feedback from somebody earlier that they were trying to fall asleep listening to our podcast, but we were too interesting to fall asleep, so they had to shut us off. So that, in the world of podcasting, I think is a compliment, especially with the world of business podcasting.
Glad we made that mark.
Yeah.
Play us on your commute, not a business.
Exactly. So on that funny note, Alex, your initial thoughts on surviving projects in the corporate environment?
Yeah, I think it's surprisingly difficult to get a project done because let's say this is a project that you're starting, you're going to interact with a bunch of different people and teams to make it happen, right? How do you get that to happen? And I think one of the main things that people always miss is painting a vision and getting people to buy into that, and allowing them to connect the dots in their own way and not being too literal about it. I think that's a great way to basically get others to agree with you and to decide to put effort towards you. Because this is the thing that I think so many people miss, is that I've got a great idea, I want to do it. Other people must be excited about it because it's the right thing to do. That's not true. They've got other things to be excited about. And the thing that you're mainly trying to do, and I think it's basically three things. One, you want to really identify and get good relationships with the smart people. And what I mean by that is there are certain people out there in the organization who can make things happen. And they are the ones. A lot of techie people kind of fall under this category. But it's like, if something goes wrong, they're the one that can make the change. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of person you need on your side. So basic relationship building of just talk to them, figure something out about them, personal fact, something like that, you're good. Right. But pull them along with the project too, because to the point that they want to be, maybe they don't want to be in person, depending on the individual. Maybe it's just they want to know. So number one, smart people. Number two, champions, mini champions, which is basically someone else who is emotionally tied to your project and its completion. Because your initial enthusiasm, great, but that's going to die eventually over time because you're asking for people to do work and change, right. And that has resistance. And they might say no to you, but they'll say yes to somebody else. So you need to find those other people who are kind of excited. Maybe it's a pet project they think is going to happen because of your project. Some kind of tie that they're going to take pride in your thing working, which means they're going to go out of their way and put effort towards making it happen. Like initial enthusiasm dies down, and then like fruition, like that second one is real hard to get to. Mm-hmm. And the third one is the goal with everybody else who aren't the smart people or the mini champions. Everybody else is get rid of the slow resistance. And by that, I mean, if they look at their inbox and there's 500 emails, you need them to go to yours first and do the thing right away instead of, no, I'll just go to these other ones and then I'll flag it for later, which is why your project suddenly slows to a crawl and dies. And you're like, why can't this get done? Why am I waiting so long? We're missing deadlines or all the rest of this stuff. It's because they don't care.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it was like the three things, like you got a big project, great. Think about the project first of how it's actually going to happen, not just here's the details of what the project is, but who's going to be involved? How are we actually going to make this happen?
There is, there is a little bit of a mini kind of SWOT analysis that needs to happen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I guess for me, now that I hear you listing those things out, I don't appreciate how much of that has been internalized. You know?
Agreed.
Like, go ahead, Ruthie.
Oh, just agree with that sentiment fully. There's a lot of these that I innately do. Maybe not even innate. I've learned to do over time through many projects. And it's good to know that these are part of what can make you successful so that you can start identifying where you have gaps or where you haven't necessarily learned to do something well enough.
Well, and also understanding, like, who are the people that you absolutely need to have on your side, like mission critical, right? And then everybody else isn't kind of a nice to have. And the surprising thing for me, I guess I've always been surprised by this too, is on the onset of something, like if you find out that somebody's doing something cool and there's a way for you to leverage that and maybe expand the scope of what they're doing, like the amount of times I've had people hesitate because they're afraid that you're going to steal their idea and take credit for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so I've tripled down on making sure that anytime I bring up the pilot project or the project, I'm praising them, or I'm saying we're leveraging so-and-so's methodology that they did before and trying it out on our situation, you know, to make sure that the love gets spread around, instead of just, I'm the smartest person in the room. Nah, I'm good at what I do, but I don't need to set the reputation or the expectation that I know what's going on all the time. No.
That's a really good point, because that kind of gets down to some of the core of this, which is egos. It's you managing your own, for one, and not trying to be like, I know everything person, because nobody does. And you're going to make a lot of mistakes very publicly if you're going to play
a lot of enemies. A lot of enemies.
A lot of people are just going to be resistant to you just based on the way that you're acting. Like there's some of that alone. But the other thing is managing the egos are basically in the kind of the pride of those around you as well. Like to your point of those who are sensitive to their pride being damaged, or their, credibility or reputation, or the opportunity loss, that might be there. But you're instead making sure and instilling that this is safe. This is going to help you. This is going to be positive for you. This is the thing we're working on. Like there's some like layers in there of being like, now, if you're taking my methodology and you're doing it, I'm now emotionally tied to the success of your project. So I want to make sure that I don't look like an idiot because of you. Like there's like pieces there, like just like you're going to be like so much more involved, and you're like, you want them to have success, and then now you can have more success because of their success. Like, there's other like little pieces kind of playing in there too.
I really like the way you started this, Alex, about painting a vision and letting the people who are potentially going to be involved, who are going to want to be involved in the process, connect the dots in their own way. I think that is super critical, especially on big projects that are going to be cross-functional in nature. If you've got an idea for a project that you can do in your own realm and doesn't really involve a lot of people, just you might want to be able to paint a vision so other people know what you're doing, and you can do it however the heck you want. But especially in these projects that involve lots and lots of people, it's here's where we're going, and here's why we're going there. Maybe there's even a date if that's imperative, just to keep everybody sort of swimming in the same direction. But then that point about letting them connect the dots in their own way, that not only allows them to feel like, oh, I have feel a sense of empowerment. It allows them to have a stake in it because they get to decide the way that they engage in the project or the way they get it done. And bonus points, they're going to see things you don't see. And so defining ahead, here's how we're going to do that, potentially pushes out the ideas that you wouldn't have thought about that could make your project more successful. The other quick call that I just wrote down in my notes as you were talking through is on identifying the smart people. I want to maybe take the emphasis on this off of the smart and more onto the other part of it, which is the people who make things happen. There's going to be smart tech-focused people who you need because they know how the systems work, or they know the thing that they know the right hammer for that particular nail, right? Those are important people. But there's also the people who just keep things moving. We all know folks in an organization who you talk to them and you say, I've got this problem, who do I need to talk to, or how do I get this going? And they can point you in the right direction, and they can send 5 emails to help you get past whatever hurdle it is. So I think there's something about the people who make things happen. The last thing that stood out to me was on this idea of champions, many champions, people who are emotionally involved and attached. And one of the things I think about on especially large enterprise projects is those are often, stakeholders, whether they're directly involved or indirectly involved. And a huge part of it is communication, making sure you have regular communication. You'll see any change management plan is going to have, we're going to have these touch points and these 5 different communications channels. We're going to use our Yammer, our Vivo Engage, whatever it is. We're going to have emails 3 times a week. We're going to have meetings. I would always say, I think oftentimes we underestimate the value of one-on-one communication with our core stakeholders. Continuous reaching out, talking to them, making sure that they're hearing from you, but also that their own voice is heard in the process. And I always use that as a way to help move projects forward. To your point about getting rid of the slow resistance, that's one really easy way. Don't send them an email, talk to them in person or via chat. It's hard to ignore the most recent request if you just talk to the person directly.
It's funny. I had a recent experience where, I was in a newer role. I'm figuring out who the cast of characters are, like who do I need to talk to be successful in the role. A lot like, what we talked about in the previous episode of, find out and go get it done. But there continued to be feedback on this one particular individual, like, all right, they can be a little rough to work with, and, watch out for this one. And I'm like, because if one person says that, it's like, well, whatever. You should probably just call them on a bad day, or, your interpretation of that. But if, enough people say that, then it's like, all right, well, I'm going to come prepared to this meeting. I'm still going to have the conversation. And as I'm going through the meeting, I'm like, wait, you're not a jerk. You're just from Boston. Like,
I want that on a mug.
Yeah. Like, it's just the different, culture clashes of, the East Coaster being more direct. What do you know? Of course that's going to happen, but it all came from a good place. Like, I could tell it was coming from a good place. So like, hey, my travel schedule is really heavy. I can't dedicate a bunch of time to this because I got to go do, X, Y, and Z. That's more core to my job than, what your project is. I appreciate that feedback. That's fine. We'll get done what we can get done when we can. And I'll try to find other solutions to, not bother you as much, but I might need your input every once in a while, when we can make it happen. So there's that kind of stuff too, where figuring out smaller details, more personal details about people have gone a really long way for me. Where, like, take 5 minutes in the beginning of the meeting, find out if they're a Yankees fan, find out if they're a Premier League fan, know a little bit about that, like, just, what makes them uniquely human, and then talk about it. Like, the amount of goodwill that I've gotten with my guitar background for people who are coming out of the woodwork. Like, yeah, I have all mine too, but I blur my background because I don't want anybody to, see that I might be playing during meetings or something. It's like, nah, own it, you know, you know. But like small gestures like that, I think have gone a really long way and allowed me to be successful. And I'm finding a lot of people, you are complaining that they can't get stuff done. And I'm looking and I'm like, well, you just show up and you're like, all right, here's what I need from you. It's like, well, come on. Like, don't make it about you. Right. Like the telemarketing example from the other episode ago, where like telemarketing is annoying because it's about what the company wants, not what you want as the individual. Right. Like it's just going to be a lot harder to get buy-in if it's blatantly, self-serving.
Another facet of this topic of getting things done or getting projects done within an enterprise, small enterprise, large enterprise, is the scope and the scale of the project. They're going to operate quite differently, and the implications for your projects are going to be quite different. So we've all been in situations in which we're kind of in a niche. We're off sort of over here. We've got an idea for a project and we can just run with it. And those sometimes are the most fun projects because you just make it happen. You do it. You inadvertently make a bunch of people's lives better or their work easier, et cetera, et cetera. And you can mostly just do your project and in the end say, this is what I did. And people go, oh, sweet, thanks. Like, that's awesome, right? There's those types of projects. And then there's the projects that involve, maybe one team, a couple of teams, and you've got a few communication layers between those types. And for those, the vision, having sort of a clear direction, all of a sudden become more important because you've got to organize across people. And then you've got the very large projects that are across lots of different teams with many different stakeholders, and those become the really challenging ones. The vision that always comes to mind with these, and we've used this analogy amongst ourselves in the past, perhaps even on this podcast, think of an armada of ships in an ocean. If you're working on a large project where you're doing something new, you have a destination, you are turning not just your own ship and guiding it through the choppy waters and all the storms and such. You have an entire cluster of ships that are all moving, and you're trying to get them all to move together. Now compare those two little pictures in our mind. One is the giant armada trying to move, how much slower it is, how wide of a turn radius it has, versus the one-off project that can sort of zip in and out of all those little ships. And I always find that useful when I'm working on large projects to think that way, because it helps ground of, okay, there are going to be parts of these larger projects that are challenging because scale changes the nature of how we work together. It changes what we have to do. You have to think about that change management piece because, as Alex mentioned earlier, change is hard, but it's hard in a way you don't notice, right? It's not hard in the way that you just push through it and you make people change. Like it's hard in the sense of it's a whole bunch of little drags on the boat turning that you have to navigate across. So that's something that I always find as an important part of the size of the project. And this is where we get into territory of finding executive or director level sponsorship on projects is what's going to help, along with that vision, keep everybody moving in a similar direction. And I think sometimes the value of that is a bit underestimated because it's so commonly applied. Oh, you got to have an executive sponsor in your project. Well, the reason it matters is because it's one of the things that provides an incentive for everybody to move.
Yeah, the size of projects is interesting because I know for me, one thing that I did recently had to do with AI, and I got a pilot to the point where the corporate team was throwing the rule book and all the red tape at me. Like, you have to stop, you have to get it as part of the roadmap, you have to do this, that, da, da, da. And I went, not doing that. I'm not putting up with, like, I don't care enough to do 4 months of politicking on this project. So, like, I called a guy and just said, can we, you hand coded a tool within the organization. can you just make this a part of the tool since it's pulling from all the data sources I am anyway with this pilot project? He's like, oh yeah, that's 20 minutes. I'm like, beautiful. So it was, to Alex's point, finding the people who get stuff done, who are in a position to do things that they may not have time to think of the unique, use case or whatever, but could easily get it done if you make it interesting enough. Right. And
go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm done. I'm rambling.
I was just going to say, think of your SWOT analysis. Let's take the conversation a little differently of the risk. How would you recognize when a project isn't going well and then what you need to do in response? So I'll throw one out of if you're doing a project pretty solo where you've done a lot of work and then you're just kind of demoing it to other people who now have to do more work.
Right.
They're not going to be real excited about that. You didn't really pull them along the way. You didn't really build the project with them, so they don't have the pride in seeing it to fruition. Instead, it's your pride in seeing it to fruition. They're not emotionally tied to the project. You just ask them to do more work. The other piece about that is if it's totally aligned with their role, great. And they'll probably say, fine, sure, yeah, we should do that. But the moment that their boss or leadership, getting to Ruthi's point of having executive sponsorship or higher up leadership sponsor, the moment their boss says, here's the new priority, they'll turn around and look at you and say, well, got to do this instead.
Yep.
And your project dies. Now it's done. Your project is that fragile. In a vacuum of indecision, yours might work for a while, but then the moment that there's a threat to it, it can crumble as well. So my thought with that one is maybe there's two things. One is do a little bit and then maybe hold some back. You might have the idea for the next step, but ask them to be involved. And then if conversation is slow, you can prompt them with this kind of next idea and kind of see where it goes. But you got to stay quiet and let them and listen and let them talk, and then kind of have them get excited and interested in the project. Now they're getting tied into it. They've spent time and effort on it. That, intangible, I have now spent half an hour of my life on your project. I'm now interested in your project.
Right.
That's the little bit that might be enough just to get that first part started. And the second part about the threat, if you're noticing that they're kind of just doing it because you're asking and it seems aligned, so they're going along with you, that's not a great sign. If it's a real small project, maybe it's something, but that resistance is there. So then it would be getting it in front of their boss, possibly during time with them, so it's public, and presenting the idea, is this a good idea? The moment the boss says yes, things are going to move faster. So little ways to get some approval as well.
So here's a question for you. How emotionally upset do you get when one of your projects has to die?
I really try not to tie my ego to my work. I've done that in the past, and that's never a good idea.
No.
I try to think of things as iterative learning with pilots, and that everything is an iterative learning with a pilot. So if this project fails, okay, what's the next project that might pivot that I can turn it into that will then succeed?
That's a whole level of thinking that I don't know that 90% of people are doing.
I mean, it's not necessarily them consciously doing that until that moment happens. But if something fails and something dies, I'm not going to just stop and be like, oh, I guess I'm just going to sit here and not do any work now or not do anything anymore. It's like, no. I've come up with a new idea, come up with a new thing, and then kind of keep going with the idea of okay, I've now learned that priorities have changed. A reorg happened. A new boss came in. Job responsibilities changed. We acquired a company. I mean, stuff like that happens all the time within a space of a quarter, and you're not going to be aware of, honestly, 90% of it. And it's just going to happen. And your project might be a quarter long and now is heavily affected by that or stopped by that. So don't have the only iron in the fire being one. Try to do some other stuff too.
Well, and that's the other thing too. Never make a project more than a year. if you're at the 18-month mark, that's just not going to happen. It's just not.
It's so hard to keep people motivated. It's such a drag to work on the same project for phase 3, phase 4, phase 5. Like, no. Have a goal and kill it. It's the same thing. I actually do this with meetings. In my agenda, I've got an agenda. Here's a couple points, and then I say my goal. My goal is this. And my goal typically is like, if we could make a list of 5 things, that's great. My goal is 2. And when we hit 2, the meeting's done. And people love it because it's like, oh, you actually have a purpose and you're actually moving to your purpose, and then you let us leave. It's amazing how much people
didn't hold us hostage in the meeting. That we're sitting here for the whole duration.
7 minutes. Congratulations. People are surprisingly happy with 7 minutes. Totally worth it.
That's just a nice little tidbit, Alex, on a way in which you can cap the meeting of like having a clear purpose, right? Because sometimes we say, oh, we could have ended early, but there was nothing that gave us that definitive stopping point.
Right.
I'm going to rewind a little bit and answer Dave's question, and then also talk a little bit about projects dying. I will say that I do struggle from time to time with projects being killed or somehow dying, or new information comes in. It's like I had this idea, this vision, and now that vision got totally overturned. Like, I struggle with that. Sure I do, right? Especially when it's like, oh, I've worked with people, we've had this idea. Like you build a camaraderie when you're creating new projects, or you're coming up with, oh, here's where we're going. So it does. I would say, yeah, sometimes that'll happen, and it'll take me like a day or so to go, okay, what is the new information? How have things changed? Okay, then how do I need to think differently? Or what do I need to shift my actions to accommodate? But it's not always an easy process. The project dying thing, though, I just chuckled because I remember working on a couple of web projects in the past, and I was like, well, this is going to, this might take a little bit. Like, I don't think that some of these timelines are feasible. And the response to me was, no, you must reach these timelines, or the organization will shift, leadership will change, and the project will not exist anymore. So I think that is sort of maybe that's more of an issue with especially large enterprises. I'm not entirely sure, but definitely something I've encountered before, which is you have almost a built-in deadline on your projects, simply because, to your point, a lot can happen in a quarter to make what the thing you were working on, maybe it's still relevant, but it's no longer the top priority and it's out.
Well, and that's an interesting point too, because if you look at the average tenure of a CMO, right? I mean, it's astonishingly short, right? I mean, let's be generous and say 24 months. The first 6 months is getting up to speed on what was happening and what the new role and responsibilities are, right? Then there's 12 months of actually doing stuff, and then there's 6 months of the person looking for the next CMO role while they're keeping things going and still trying to hit what they said they were going to do when they took their job, right? And then they're out because the CMO role is so short. So you have that like 12-month, maybe 15-month window to align whatever you're doing to their priorities before the new director or the new CMO or the new SVP or however your org does it, right? To actually support those, performance indicators and whatever else, and, have the politics for it. And then you have to be onto your new one. And I do think that is a problem with the larger groups, but I know some friends that are in smaller companies that they're getting rid of the CMOs and then they're not backfilling them. So then they're just like thrust into, being now on this leadership level because they're the ones that remain. So
we should do an episode on that, by the way. What happens when you're the remainder?
They're promoted by tenure.
Yes, because you have new obligations that you might not have signed up for, that you didn't even realize until the vacuum opened up, and then all of a sudden it's on your plate.
With less people. Speaking quick to Ruthie, you mentioned it, I mentioned it, and Dave, you did before, is vision. And I think And Dave, I'm going to ask you the same thing about projects dying because I'm curious on yours. But so far we've got 2, and my response is actually pretty similar to that. Is my focus was the vision. If the project dies, I don't take it so personally because I'm tied probably more to the vision than I am the individual project. So then I think of a different project or different way to still kind of hit that same vision that I'm still kind of emotionally tied to. And quite frankly, if that thing gets crushed, yeah, I'm going to be emotionally hurt. I mean, like there is definitely some like passion behind it because it seems like the right direction, the next thing that we should be doing. But still trying to stay open enough to be like, things are going to pivot, things are going to shift. So Dave,
I think because of the music background and I think because of my personality too, in terms of projects, I guess I'm a bit of a sociopath. I don't care if they live or die. Like, because I will find a new one. I will just keep on keeping on.
Find new victims.
Yeah. Like
this analogy is going to go dark.
Yeah. Say what you will about the mafia, but no. The thing with being the musician or the writer or having those experiences in the beginning of my career, I think coupled with the agency experience early on too, is just like a creative project is to capture a moment in time. And if you were to complete that project at any other moment in time, it wouldn't be the same thing. And having that kind of understanding of that has allowed me to let go of a lot, I think, when it comes to the normal working world, right? Where it's just, okay, here's the group of people I get to jam with for this period of time. We're going to do some cool things. And then when somebody moves on, great, we're going to find a new drummer or a new analytics person or a new whatever. And the vibe of the band will be different, but we'll still be able to do some cool things. It'll just be different. Right. So I guess my approach is a little more zen, which would be much more positive than the sociopathic spin I took initially. But anyway, what was your second question before I get in trouble?
If I remember. Oh, the vision piece was kind of the other piece of like how strongly do you kind of subscribe to the idea of like an overall kind of goal that you have at work and the projects are just kind of underneath of it, or do you see kind of each one separate?
I used to be more tied to here's the North Star, here's what I'm doing. Like for me personally, that's very important. That's why I spend a ton of time at the end of the year and the beginning of the year figuring out what it is I want to do for the next year. Like it's not like, New Year's resolutions, but it's what are my priorities for this year, right? And I think if your organization is good at market planning, that can go a long way to be like, here's what we're going to do over the next 12 months. Here's the opportunity we've identified. We're going to go chase after that. And I appreciate that. I think if I'm tied to one business, one whatever, it's hard for me because then everything becomes a little bit more important. But at least with my last few roles, I've had to service 5 or 6 different businesses or different go-to-market models. So like if I got bored with one, I could just switch to another one and then go down that rabbit hole and then switch to the other one, which for me is really good. But I understand for other people could be very stressful. But I do think it's important for leadership to have a vision, because if you don't have the vision, you can't be inspiring. And if you're not inspiring as a leader, you're not actually leading, you're a manager, right? because managing is what you currently have and making sure that that's optimized. Leadership is actually bringing people with you and towards something new, in my mind, at least. Yeah, I'll end there.
I love a vision. Love a vision. And it's all to your question about individual projects versus all tying together. I am very keen on the all tying together aspect of it, in part because there ought to be, I think, a why behind the things you're doing. And if you just have a bunch of projects that aren't sort of tying back, that suggests there's not sort of an underlying, here's the reason why we're doing these things. Even if it's a loosey-goosey kind of reason, at least there's got to be a, here's why this is something that is worth my time. I think, again, just remembering that the time we spend at work is still part time of our life. So to some degree, it does matter a little bit what we're working on and what we're not. Maybe that's another podcast discussion about, how much are we just working to pay the bills and to do the things that we actually want to do versus how much are we getting out of the things that we're doing every day. For me personally, having a bit of a why behind why I'm doing the things I do gives me a better sense of here's why I'm spending my days doing what I do. But I tend to be much more, I tend to have a vision for what I'm doing, how it fits in with what the rest of the teams around me are doing and what we're trying to ultimately do as an organization. I find that particularly helpful, especially when it comes to, and here's the thing we're doing next. Sort of being that helpful sort of guardrail to say, this is where we're going and why we're going there. And keeping it non-prescriptive in terms of exactly how or what it looks like also allows room for new ideas to come in. To your point, Dave, about leadership versus management, completely echo that of, managing is making sure everybody's got their HR paperwork, right? Leading is making sure that when they submit that HR paperwork, it's because they've thought about here's how what I'm doing this year fits in with what the larger team is trying to accomplish and what the company as a whole is trying to accomplish.
Please click through all of your compliance things prior to the deadline.
It's literally something I have to do after this.
Actually, Ruthie, I'm gonna pin an idea here. As you were talking, I was thinking about how when I was younger, I got much more frustrated with projects and with the organizations. And why are they making the decisions that they are? And can't they see that this is such an obvious choice from, but then it's like, wait a second, this is from a marketing lens, specifically from a digital marketing lens, not factoring in supply chains or, the whole ecosystem that has to go into the larger decisions. And the idea that I may want to explore later with you guys would be, as I've gone through my career and learned more about the finance side of things, I may not like the decisions, but I understand them better, right? I don't think finance and accounting should have the power that they do, but that's definitely another episode.
And I think this is where having clear visions, and maybe I'll give an example of vision and like how you might think about this in just a moment. But having clear visions from the top all the way down allows to bridge some of the gaps that you talked about, Dave. Right? Because if you look up and you go, why the heck are they making the decisions they are? That to me is a symptom of lack of transparency. You don't have a clear idea of here's what the top is trying to do as a company as a whole. This is how the next layer ladders up and what they're trying to accomplish in order to make that thing happen, and then so on and so forth down the line, which then ties in. Oh, finance is trying to do this thing because this is how they're reaching that larger vision. So the framework that I'll share that I found very useful in sort of going through this visioning exercise, right? Because vision is sort of a fluffy word. It can mean a lot of things. To put it a little bit more practically, I use the GHOST framework, GOST. So you have a goal, which is here's where we're going, right? This is like we want to get to Mars, say, and then you have objectives. So those are time specific and measurable. So these are key things that you know that you are reaching towards that goal, because that goal might actually be out of your reach. Maybe that goal is something that's aspirational, but the objectives are things that you say, these are things that we know we're going to do that are going to get us closer to that ultimate goal. So reaching space flight, right? Getting to the moon. Those are things that I'll get by X date. Those are things that are going to get you closer to that Mars idea. Then under that, you have strategy. So here's the approaches we're going to take towards getting to those objectives. And then finally down to tactics, which is here's the specific action items we're going to take within each of those strategies that are going to later up to those objectives that are going to get us to where we're going. So that's a way in which we can take those sort of visions of here's where we're going and bring it all the way down to here's what I'm going to do next. And those objective strategies and tactics might be slightly different across an organization, but having that sort of shared goal and then having everybody think through how they're going to support that is such a valuable tool, especially as we talk about large projects, because it allows people to align their incentives and get to the end result.
There was an interesting idea in one of my classes for my MBA that I come back to every once in a while. And this might seem like it's coming out of left field, but my brain associated it with what you said. It was a persuasion class, and the sales guy came in and he talked about how he used the Discovery Insights colors coding to align with his clients so that he knew how to speak to somebody when he was going to talk to them. So if he knew they were really red, he would be really direct to the point, like, hey, I don't want to waste a lot of your time, but I have this new opportunity. We have these new products. I thought of you, so I figured I'd share it. And if you're not interested, great, but here's the information. Thanks. That's the end of the phone call, right? Like 30 seconds. I thought of you. Give me a call. That's it. But if it's, if they're really blue and they're analytical, then, hey, we have this new thing. Here's a research paper on it and how it might fit into your situation. If you want me to set up a quick call, walk you through what we have, answer any questions you might have about it, let me know. And then green's the more emotional, yellow's the including everybody. So then it's going to be more of a like webinar so that there's, other people involved so that, there's the whole trope and whatever else. So tying those tactics to what you're doing and knowing who your audience is can go a long way as well to being persuasive and successful. So, yeah. Anyway, before I continue to ramble and get on to other things, I think we can call this a successful episode. Thank you for making it this far. Thank you for listening. Like, share, subscribe. Please let us know any feedback. We love hearing what you like, what you don't like, and episode ideas, right? For like Ruthi's friend with the episode idea from the last one that we did. So keep them coming. Let us know. Survive the next week until we talk to you 2 weeks from now in the next episode of Enterprising Minds. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.